The morning sun cast long shadows across the Special Operations Training Facility as Master Sergeant Elena Vasquez adjusted her gear for the final assessment. After 18 months of grueling preparation, today would determine if she earned a spot on the elite counterterrorism response team. Only 3 women had ever qualified for this unit in its 20-year history. Elena checked her sidearm one last time, feeling the familiar weight of her Sig Sauer P320 against her hip. She had carried this weapon through 2 combat deployments in Afghanistan, where it had never failed her. The grip was worn smooth from thousands of hours of training, and she could draw and fire in under a second without conscious thought. "Candidates, form up!" Colonel Martinez's voice echoed across the staging area. 24 operators stood at attention, but Elena noticed several instructors watching her with particular interest. She had heard the whispers throughout training. Some questioned whether a 5'6" woman could handle the physical demands of close-quarters combat against multiple larger opponents. Colonel Martinez walked down the line, his weathered face revealing nothing. Today's assessment simulates a hostage rescue scenario. You will infiltrate a 3-story building, neutralize hostile targets, and extract the civilian. You have ammunition limits, time constraints, and 0 margin for error. He paused in front of Elena. Equipment failures happen in the field. Adaptability separates survivors from casualties. The first candidate entered the kill house. Elena could hear muffled gunshots and shouts through the reinforced walls. After 12 minutes, the operator emerged, breathing heavily but victorious. One by one, her fellow candidates tackled the course. Some succeeded brilliantly. Others failed spectacularly, their training ending with the sharp buzz of failure alarms. Elena's turn approached. She performed her final equipment check with methodical precision. Magazine seated properly, chamber loaded, safety off, her backup knife secured in its ankle sheath. Communications headset functioning. Every piece of gear had been inspected and tested dozens of times. "Vasquez, you're up," called Lieutenant Hayes, the range safety officer. Elena nodded and moved toward the entrance. The kill house loomed before her, a maze of rooms, corridors, and potential ambush points. Somewhere inside, instructors playing hostile roles waited with training ammunition that stung like angry hornets when it found its mark. She took 3 deep breaths, centering herself as her grandfather had taught her during childhood hunting trips in the Texas Hill Country. "Mia," he used to say, "the calmest hunter brings home dinner. Panic feeds only the buzzards." Those words had carried her through firefights in Kandahar and would guide her through the next 20 minutes. Elena stepped through the entrance and immediately went to work. The first floor contained a kitchen and living area with multiple points of concealment. She moved like flowing water, checking corners and clearing angles with practiced efficiency. Her weapon stayed at the ready position, finger indexed along the trigger guard until threats materialized. The first hostile appeared from behind a refrigerator, raising his training rifle. Elena's response was instantaneous. Double tap to center mass, exactly as she had practiced 10,000 times. The instructor stumbled backward, his laser tag vest announcing his simulated death with electronic bleeps. 2 more hostiles emerged from a side room, trying to catch her in crossfire. Elena dove behind a kitchen counter, rolled left, and engaged both targets before they could acquire her position. Her movements flowed from one position to the next without wasted motion. Years of martial arts training had taught her that economy of movement meant survival. The second floor presented greater challenges. Narrow corridors limited her options for cover and concealment. She had to trust her training, moving with controlled aggression through the confined space. A hostile tried to ambush her from a bathroom doorway, but Elena had anticipated the threat. She put 3 rounds into his chest before he could fire a single shot. The third floor was where everything changed. Elena climbed the stairs methodically, weapon ready, every sense alert for danger. Intelligence reports indicated the hostage was being held in the master bedroom at the end of the hallway. Between her position and that room lay 50 feet of corridor with multiple doors that could conceal threats. She began her advance, checking each room systematically. Clear, clear, clear. The pattern held until she reached the fourth door. As Elena prepared to breach the room, she heard the unmistakable sound of metal hitting concrete behind her. Spinning around, she saw her sidearm lying on the floor 15 feet away. The retention holster had somehow released, sending her primary weapon skittering across the concrete. In the same instant, 5 hostile operators emerged from concealed positions throughout the hallway. "Well, well," laughed the lead instructor, a massive man she recognized as Sergeant Major Thompson. "Looks like your baby rattle just broke, little girl. Time to see what you're really made of." Elena's mind processed the situation in milliseconds. 5 opponents, all larger and heavier than her. No primary weapon. 20 feet of narrow corridor that prevented maneuvering. The hostage scenario required her to continue the mission despite equipment failure. The first attacker rushed forward, confident that an unarmed woman posed no serious threat. Elena shifted her weight to her back foot and drove a knee strike into his solar plexus with devastating force. As he doubled over, gasping for air, she grabbed his shoulders and brought her knee up again, connecting with his face. He dropped like a stone. The second attacker tried to tackle her low, but Elena had anticipated the move. She sprawled backward, using his momentum against him. As he hit the ground, she wrapped her arm around his neck and applied a rear naked choke. Within seconds, his struggles ceased as simulated unconsciousness claimed him. 3 opponents remained, and they were no longer treating her like a helpless victim. Sergeant Major Thompson circled to her left while 2 other instructors approached from the right. Elena backed against the wall, using the barrier to protect her 6 o'clock position. "Time to end this charade," Thompson growled, launching himself forward with surprising speed for such a large man. Elena sidestepped at the last possible moment, grabbing his wrist as he passed. Using a classical jiu-jitsu throw, she sent him crashing into the wall with bone-jarring force. The fourth attacker swung a wild haymaker at her head, but Elena ducked under the punch and drove her elbow into his ribs. She felt something crack under the impact. As he stumbled sideways, she swept his legs and sent him crashing to the floor. A quick stomp to his chest eliminated him from the fight. Only 1 hostile remained standing. The final instructor had watched his 4 colleagues fall in rapid succession, and his confidence had evaporated. Elena could see uncertainty in his eyes as she advanced toward him. He threw a desperate combination of punches, but she slipped each strike with minimal movement. Elena caught his 4th punch at the wrist, stepped inside his guard, and delivered a palm strike to his chin that snapped his head back violently. As he staggered, she hooked her leg behind his knee and threw him to the ground with a sacrifice technique that left him stunned and motionless. Silence filled the corridor except for the heavy breathing of defeated instructors. Elena retrieved her sidearm and checked the retention mechanism. A small piece of debris had somehow worked its way into the holster system, causing the accidental release. She cleared the obstruction and reholstered her weapon. The timer on her wrist showed that exactly 83 seconds had elapsed since her weapon hit the floor. 83 seconds to neutralize 5 opponents using only empty hand techniques. Elena felt no satisfaction, only the professional acknowledgement that her training had functioned exactly as designed. She stepped over the groaning bodies and continued toward the hostage room. The mission was not complete until she successfully extracted the civilian. Personal vindication could wait. Professional standards could not. Colonel Martinez's voice crackled through her headset. "Outstanding work, Sergeant Vasquez. Proceed to objective and complete the mission." Elena smiled grimly and resumed her advance. The hardest part was over, but the most important part remained ahead. In special operations, individual heroics meant nothing if the mission failed. She had learned that lesson in the mountains of Afghanistan, where her unit had rescued 3 kidnapped aid workers despite overwhelming odds. As she approached the final door, Elena reflected on the path that had brought her to this moment. Growing up in El Paso, she had faced constant doubts about her abilities. Too small for basketball, too quiet for cheerleading, too intense for most social groups. The military had given her a place where intensity and precision mattered more than size or popularity. Her father, a Vietnam veteran, had initially opposed her enlistment. The military is no place for young ladies, he had argued. But after watching her graduate from basic training as the honor recruit in her class, his attitude had changed completely. Now he wore Army t-shirts and bragged about his daughter to anyone who would listen. Elena reached for the door handle, her weapon ready for whatever lay beyond. The hostage rescue scenario would test different skills than the corridor fight, but she felt confident in her preparation. Months of close-quarters battle training had prepared her for exactly this type of challenge. The door opened to reveal a mock bedroom with a civilian mannequin tied to a chair in the center of the room. Standard layout, standard procedure. Elena cleared the corners methodically, confirmed no additional threats, and approached the hostage. According to the scenario, she had to untie the civilian and escort them to the extraction point on the first floor. As she worked on the ropes, Elena's radio crackled to life. "Vasquez, be advised. Additional hostile forces are moving to your position. Estimate 30 seconds until contact." Elena's hands moved faster on the knots. The ropes were intentionally complex, designed to test fine motor skills under pressure. Her fingers worked with surgeon-like precision despite the stress of the situation. The final knot came free just as she heard footsteps on the stairs below. "Come on," she whispered to the mannequin as if it were a real person. "Time to go home." Elena guided her simulated hostage toward the window that served as the extraction point. According to the scenario, a helicopter would be waiting to extract them from the roof, but first they had to reach the stairwell without being detected by the incoming hostile forces. The sound of boots on concrete grew louder. Elena estimated at least 4 operators moving up the stairs with tactical precision. She had perhaps 15 seconds before they reached the 3rd floor. The extraction window was only 10 feet away, but those 10 feet might as well have been 10 miles if the hostiles reached her position first. Elena made her decision. Instead of trying to reach the window with the hostage, she positioned herself at the top of the stairs with a clear field of fire. When the first hostile head appeared around the corner, she was ready. 3 quick shots dropped the lead attacker. The second man tried to return fire, but Elena had already shifted position. She put him down with a controlled pair to center mass. The 3rd and 4th attackers tried to rush her position simultaneously, but Elena's superior position and marksmanship training gave her every advantage. Within moments, 4 more training casualties littered the stairwell. Elena retrieved her hostage and moved toward the extraction point, her mission nearly complete. As she reached the window, she looked back at the corridor where she had fought 5 opponents with her bare hands. That 83-second engagement would become the stuff of training legend, but for Elena, it was simply another day at the office. She had proven that size and strength mattered less than skill, training, and the will to win. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but today belonged to her. Elena helped her mannequin through the extraction window and onto the simulated helicopter landing zone. Mission accomplished. Assessment passed. Dreams realized. The doubters could find something else to worry about, because Sergeant Elena Vasquez had just earned her place among the elite. The debriefing room fell silent as Colonel Martinez finished reviewing the assessment footage. 23 failed candidates sat in rigid attention, their dreams of joining the elite counterterrorism response team crushed by various failures during the final test. Elena sat alone in the front row, her performance having placed her in a category all her own. "In 30 years of military service," Colonel Martinez began, his voice carrying across the sterile conference room. "I have never witnessed a more impressive display of combat adaptability." He clicked his remote, and the wall screen displayed freeze-frame images from Elena's corridor engagement. 83 seconds. 5 opponents neutralized. 0 injuries sustained. Sergeant Major Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his chair, a ice pack pressed against his bruised ribs. Despite his embarrassment at being defeated by someone half his size, professional respect had replaced his initial skepticism. "Sir, if I may," he interrupted. "Sergeant Vasquez demonstrated textbook close-quarters combat techniques under the most adverse conditions possible." Elena remained motionless, her face revealing nothing. Inside, however, her mind raced through the implications of what had just occurred. The assessment was over, but she understood that real challenges lay ahead. Earning a spot on this team meant facing missions that made training scenarios look like children's games. Colonel Martinez continued his analysis. "The weapon retention failure was not accidental. We intentionally compromised Sergeant Vasquez's holster to test her adaptability under catastrophic equipment failure." Murmurs rippled through the room as the other candidates realized the true nature of the test. "Every member of this unit will eventually face situations where their primary weapons become unavailable. How they respond determines mission success or failure." Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chen, the unit's deputy commander, stood from her position at the back of the room. Elena had heard stories about Chen's legendary career in Army Special Operations. 3 combat deployments, 2 Silver Stars, and a reputation for getting impossible missions accomplished through sheer determination. "Sergeant Vasquez," Chen called out, "please remain after dismissal. The rest of you, transportation to your home stations departs at 1400 hours. Thank you for your efforts, and good luck in your future assignments." The failed candidates filed out silently, some casting envious glances at Elena as they passed. She had achieved what they could not, but she understood their disappointment. Military careers were built on seizing rare opportunities, and second chances in special operations were virtually non-existent. When the room cleared, Elena found herself facing the most senior leadership in counterterrorism response team. Colonel Martinez, Lieutenant Colonel Chen, and Command Sergeant Major Williams represented decades of combined special operations experience. Their next words would determine the trajectory of her military career. "Vasquez," Colonel Martinez began, "your performance today exceeded all expectations, but I need to address something important before we proceed." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "The corridor engagement was impressive, but what caught our attention was your immediate transition back to mission focus. Lesser operators might have celebrated their personal victory. You treated it as a minor obstacle and continued toward the objective." Elena nodded respectfully. "Sir, the mission always comes first. Personal satisfaction is irrelevant if hostages remain in danger." Lieutenant Colonel Chen smiled approvingly. "That attitude will serve you well in this unit, but you need to understand what you're volunteering for. Our missions take place in locations that don't officially exist, against enemies who officially aren't there. Success brings no public recognition. Failure brings consequences that extend far beyond personal career damage." Command Sergeant Major Williams, who had remained silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. His gravelly voice carried the authority of 30 years in special operations. "Sergeant Vasquez, I've reviewed your service record extensively. 2 combat deployments, expert marksmanship ratings, advanced martial arts certifications, and consistently outstanding performance evaluations. But statistics don't tell the whole story." He pulled out a thick folder and placed it on the table. "I spoke with your former squad leader in Afghanistan, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. He told me about the village rescue mission where your team was outnumbered 10-1. According to his report, you single-handedly neutralized 6 enemy combatants to protect wounded civilians while the rest of your squad established a defensive perimeter." Elena remembered that day vividly. The Taliban had attacked a remote village, taking civilians hostage in a mosque while her squad was conducting a routine patrol nearby. Rodriguez had ordered her to provide overwatch while he called for reinforcements, but the situation had deteriorated rapidly when insurgents began executing prisoners. Sergeant Rodriguez also mentioned that you disobeyed his direct order to maintain your position, Williams continued. Instead, you infiltrated the mosque through a drainage tunnel and eliminated the immediate threat to civilian lives. Care to explain your decision-making process? Elena met his gaze steadily. Sergeant Major, I calculated that waiting for backup would result in multiple civilian casualties. The tactical situation favored immediate action over prolonged engagement. I accept full responsibility for violating my orders. But I would make the same decision again under identical circumstances. Colonel Martinez and Lieutenant Colonel Chen exchanged meaningful glances. Williams nodded slowly, closing the folder with a soft thud. That's exactly the answer we hope to hear. This unit requires operators who can think independently while maintaining absolute mission focus. Blind obedience has no place in special operations. There is one final matter to address, Chen announced, standing and walking to a secure safe in the corner of the room. She retrieved a thick manila envelope marked with security classifications that Elena had never seen before. Your new assignment will require the highest level of security clearance. The background investigation will examine every aspect of your life in extraordinary detail. Elena had expected this requirement. Special operations units dealt with sensitive information that could compromise national security if mishandled. Ma'am, I understand the requirements and accept any necessary investigation procedures. Good, Chen replied, handing her the envelope. Inside, you'll find your new duty assignment, housing arrangements, and contact information for the security clearance investigator. You have 72 hours to report to Fort Carson, Colorado, where you'll begin advanced training with your new team. Colonel Martinez stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Sergeant Vasquez, welcome to the Counterterrorism Response Team. Your training begins Monday morning at 0500 hours. I suggest you use the weekend to rest and prepare mentally for what lies ahead. Elena accepted the envelope and saluted crisply. Thank you, sir. I won't let the team down. As she turned to leave, Williams called her name one final time. Vasquez, one piece of advice from an old soldier. This unit operates at a level of intensity that can consume people if they're not careful. Maintain your connections to the world outside special operations. The mission is important, but it's not everything. Elena nodded gratefully. She had seen operators who allowed their careers to become their entire identity, and the results were rarely positive. Balancing professional excellence with personal humanity required constant vigilance, but she was determined to succeed in both areas. Leaving the debriefing room, Elena walked across the training facility that had been her home for the past 18 months. Tomorrow, she would begin a new chapter in her military career. But today belonged to quiet reflection and preparation. Her cell phone buzzed with a text message from her father. Mija, saw the news about your selection on the base website. Your mother is crying tears of joy, and I'm so proud I can't speak properly. Call when you can. Elena smiled at his message. Her parents had supported her military career despite their initial concerns about the dangers involved. Their pride meant more to her than any military decoration or professional recognition. She walked to her quarters and began packing her personal belongings. Most soldiers accumulated extensive collections of gear and equipment over their careers, but Elena believed in traveling light. Everything she truly needed fit into 2 duffel bags and a small foot locker. As she folded her civilian clothes, Elena thought about the path that had led her to this moment. Growing up in a working-class family in El Paso, military service had represented opportunity and adventure beyond the limited options available in her hometown. Her decision to enlist had initially disappointed her parents, who had hoped she would pursue college and a traditional career. The early years of military service had been challenging in unexpected ways. Basic training was physically demanding but mentally straightforward. Advanced individual training had introduced complexity and specialization. Her first duty assignment with an infantry unit had provided real-world application of military skills in a combat environment. But it was during her second deployment to Afghanistan that Elena had discovered her true calling. The village rescue mission that Command Sergeant Major Williams had mentioned was not her only independent action under fire. On 3 separate occasions, she had made split-second decisions that saved lives and completed missions despite overwhelming odds. Her squad leader, Rodriguez, had initially been furious about her tendency to deviate from established plans. But after witnessing the results of her tactical innovations, he had become her strongest advocate for advancement to special operations. His recommendation letter had been instrumental in her selection for the counterterrorism response team assessment. Elena finished packing and sat on her narrow military cot, envelope in hand. Inside were orders that would take her to assignments she could barely imagine. The training at Fort Carson would push her capabilities to new limits, preparing her for missions that required the ultimate combination of physical skill, mental toughness, and moral courage. Her phone rang, interrupting her contemplation. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number with a Colorado area code. "Sergeant Vasquez, this is Captain Michael Torres, your new team leader. I wanted to personally welcome you to the unit and provide some additional information about your upcoming training." Elena straightened unconsciously, responding to the authority in his voice. "Thank you, sir. I'm honored to be joining the team." "I've reviewed footage from your assessment," Torres continued. "Your performance in the corridor engagement was exceptional, but I'm more interested in your tactical decision-making throughout the entire scenario. We need operators who can adapt to rapidly changing conditions while maintaining situational awareness." "Sir, I'm prepared for whatever training challenges lie ahead." Torres chuckled softly. "Sergeant, I guarantee that statement will be tested extensively over the next 6 months. But based on your record and today's performance, I believe you have the potential to become an outstanding team member. Get some rest this weekend. Monday morning will arrive sooner than you think." After ending the call, Elena lay back on her cot and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, she would travel to Colorado and begin preparing for missions that most people couldn't imagine. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the opportunity to make a real difference in the world. She thought about the 5 instructors she had defeated in 83 seconds. That engagement had been important as a demonstration of her capabilities, but it was only the beginning. Real enemies would not pull their punches or limit themselves to non-lethal training ammunition. The stakes would be measured in lives rather than assessment scores. Elena closed her eyes and began the mental preparation routine her grandfather had taught her during those childhood hunting trips. "Mija," she could still hear him saying, "the hunt begins long before you enter the woods. It starts in your mind, where courage and calmness must learn to live together." Tomorrow would bring new challenges and higher stakes. But tonight, Elena Vasquez slept the peaceful sleep of someone who had proven herself worthy of the most elite unit in the military. Her weapon had been taken away, but her true strength lay in skills that could never be lost or stolen. The countdown to Monday morning had begun. 6 months after joining the counterterrorism response team, Elena found herself crouched in the shadows of an abandoned warehouse in eastern Ukraine. The October wind cut through her tactical gear as she monitored radio communications from her overwatch position. 3 floors below, her team was preparing to assault a building where international terrorists held 12 humanitarian aid workers hostage. Captain Torres's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Falcon 2, status report on the north entrance." Elena adjusted her night vision scope and scanned the target building methodically. Multiple guards visible through windows. I count 6 tangos on the 2nd floor, unknown numbers on 1st and 3rd. Hostages appear to be held in the southeast corner room based on thermal imaging. The mission had begun 18 hours earlier when Elena's unit received emergency orders to deploy to Ukraine. A radical terrorist cell had captured workers from the International Red Cross and demanded the release of imprisoned associates in exchange for the hostages' lives. Ukrainian authorities had requested American assistance due to the international nature of the crisis. Elena's team had infiltrated the area under cover of darkness, establishing surveillance positions around the target building. Intelligence reports indicated the terrorists were heavily armed with automatic weapons and explosives. A direct assault would likely result in civilian casualties, requiring the precision and skill that made Elena's unit legendary. Falcon 2. "Prepare for movement," Torres ordered. "We execute in 30 seconds. Elena checked her equipment one final time. Her primary weapon was a suppressed M4 carbine, configured for close-quarters battle. Backup pistols secured in a retention holster that had been modified after the training incident 6 months earlier. Night vision goggles functioning perfectly. Communications clear and secure. The assault began with coordinated precision. Elena's teammates moved through predetermined breach points while she provided overwatch support from her elevated position. Through her scope, she watched Torres and Sergeant Martinez enter through the main entrance, their movements flowing like water through the building's corridors. "Contact front," Martinez whispered into his radio as the first terrorist appeared in his sight picture. 2 suppressed shots dropped the target before he could raise an alarm. The team continued advancing toward the hostage location, eliminating threats with surgical precision. Elena shifted her position to maintain visual contact with her teammates. The warehouse rooftop offered excellent fields of fire, but she had to move constantly to support the assault team's advance through the building. As she repositioned, her boot caught on a loose piece of metal, sending it clattering across the concrete surface. The sound echoed through the night like a gunshot. Immediately, Elena saw movement in the target building as terrorists rushed to investigate the noise. Her overwatch position had been compromised, but breaking cover now would expose her teammates to counterattack from above. "Falcon 2 compromised," she reported calmly. "Multiple tangos moving to my position." Torres' response was immediate. "Hold position and continue overwatch. We're 2 minutes from the hostages." Elena settled into a defensive position behind a concrete barrier and prepared for company. Through her night vision, she could see armed figures climbing an external fire escape toward her location. 4 men, each carrying assault rifles and wearing tactical gear. Professional terrorists, not the usual amateurs her unit typically encountered. The first attacker reached the rooftop and moved cautiously toward her last known position. Elena allowed him to pass her concealed location before emerging behind him. A quick thrust with her combat knife ended his threat silently. She dragged his body behind the barrier and waited for the next target. The second terrorist was more cautious, using tactical movement techniques that suggested military training. Elena couldn't risk a knife attack against an alert, competent opponent in open ground. Instead, she used her suppressed pistol to put 2 rounds center mass as he crossed an open area between cover positions. 2 down, 2 remaining. But the third and fourth attackers had heard their colleague fall and were now moving with extreme caution. Elena could hear them communicating in hushed Russian, coordinating their approach to her position. These were not ordinary criminals, but trained soldiers fighting for a cause they believed in. Elena's radio crackled with an urgent transmission from Torres. "Falcon 2, we need immediate overwatch on the 3rd floor. Multiple hostiles moving toward the target room." She looked through her scope and saw the crisis developing below. 3 terrorists were advancing toward the room containing the hostages, likely planning to execute prisoners before the assault team could reach them. Elena had a clear shot on all 3 targets, but the 2 remaining attackers on her level would reach her position within seconds. The tactical situation required an impossible choice: engage the threats below and save the hostages, or defend herself against the immediate danger on the rooftop. Elena's training provided the answer without hesitation. The mission always came first. She lined up her first shot on the lead terrorist approaching the hostage room. The suppressed round took him down instantly. As she shifted to the second target, rough hands grabbed her rifle and yanked it from her grasp. The third rooftop attacker had reached her position while she was focused downrange. Elena released the rifle rather than fight for control of the weapon. Instead, she drew her sidearm and spun toward the threat. But the terrorist's partner was already there, slamming into her with brutal force. The impact sent her pistol flying across the rooftop, leaving her disarmed and facing two opponents in close combat. The first attacker swung the butt of her own rifle at her head, but Elena ducked under the strike and drove her elbow into his ribs. She felt bones crack under the impact as he stumbled backward, gasping for breath. The second terrorist tried to tackle her while she was engaged with his partner, but Elena had anticipated the move. Using a classic jiu-jitsu technique, she grabbed the charging terrorist's jacket and fell backward, placing her foot in his stomach and throwing him over her head. He crashed into a ventilation unit with bone-jarring force and didn't get back up. The first attacker had recovered and was raising Elena's own rifle to shoot her. She dove forward, inside the weapon's effective range, and grabbed the barrel with both hands. A sharp twist disarmed him, and Elena reversed the rifle to use as a club. The stock connected with his temple, dropping him unconscious to the concrete. Silence returned to the rooftop, broken only by Elena's controlled breathing and the distant sound of her teammates clearing the building below. She retrieved her pistol and moved back to her overwatch position. Through her scope, she could see Torres leading rescued hostages toward the extraction point. "Falcon 2, hostages secure," Torres reported. "Prepare for extraction in 60 seconds. Elena quickly gathered her gear and prepared to leave the rooftop. The mission had been successful, but she knew that post-action reports would raise questions about her equipment failures. Twice now in 6 months, she had lost her weapons under combat conditions. Some commanders might view this as a pattern of carelessness rather than simple bad luck. As she rappelled down the building's exterior wall, Elena reflected on the similarities between tonight's engagement and her assessment 6 months earlier. Both situations had forced her to fight multiple opponents without firearms. Both had tested her adaptability under extreme stress. Both had ended with mission success despite overwhelming odds. The extraction helicopter arrived precisely on schedule, its rotors whipping dust and debris across the landing zone. Elena helped load the rescued hostages, while her teammates established a security perimeter. 12 civilians who had faced certain death were now safe and heading home to their families. During the flight back to their forward operating base, Captain Torres sat beside Elena and reviewed the night's events. "I monitored your radio transmissions during the rooftop engagement," he said quietly, ensuring their conversation remained private. "You prioritized Overwatch support over personal security. That decision probably saved lives." Elena nodded respectfully. "Sir, the hostages were the primary concern. Personal safety is always secondary to mission accomplishment." Torres studied her carefully. "Sergeant, this is the second time you've been forced into hand-to-hand combat due to weapon retention issues. I need to know if there's an equipment problem we should address." "No, sir," Elena replied honestly. "Both incidents resulted from tactical choices I made under pressure. During the assessment, I was focused on clearing corners instead of protecting my gear. Tonight, I prioritized target engagement over defensive positioning. The responsibility is mine alone." "That's not entirely accurate," Torres corrected. "Your tactical choices were sound given the circumstances. However, I am concerned about a pattern of equipment failures at critical moments." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "I'm recommending you for additional training in weapons retention techniques, but I'm also putting you in for a commendation based on tonight's performance." Elena was surprised by both announcements. "Sir, I don't feel that a commendation is appropriate. I simply did my job according to training and standard operating procedures." Torres smiled slightly. Sergeant, you neutralized 4 armed terrorists in close combat while simultaneously providing overwatch support to save hostage lives. That performance exceeds any reasonable definition of simply doing your job. The commendation is well-deserved. The helicopter touched down at their base, and Elena helped unload the rescued civilians. Medical personnel immediately began checking the former hostages for injuries and signs of trauma. Most appeared physically unharmed, but Elena could see the emotional toll of their ordeal in their eyes. One of the aid workers, a middle-aged woman from Germany, approached Elena as she was securing her gear. "Excuse me," the woman said in accented English. "I wanted to thank you for saving our lives. The guards told us they planned to kill everyone if rescue was attempted." Elena felt uncomfortable with personal thanks for professional duties, but she understood the woman's need to express gratitude. "Ma'am, I'm glad you're safe. That's what matters most." "No," the woman insisted. "You don't understand. I was watching through a crack in the door when those men came to kill us. I saw you shooting from the rooftop even while other terrorists attacked you. You could have protected yourself, but you chose to protect strangers instead." Elena didn't know how to respond to such direct praise. Military training emphasized team success over individual recognition, and she genuinely believed that any member of her unit would have made the same choices under identical circumstances. Later that evening, Elena sat alone in her temporary quarters, writing her after-action report. The document would become part of her permanent military record and would influence future assignment decisions. Accuracy was essential, but so was context that explained her tactical reasoning. She described the equipment failures without making excuses, explained her decision to prioritize hostage protection over personal security, and analyzed lessons learned that might improve future operations. The report was factual, professional, and took full responsibility for both successes and mistakes. As Elena finished writing, she received a secure phone call from Lieutenant Colonel Chen back at Fort Carson. "Sergeant Vasquez, I've reviewed preliminary reports from tonight's mission. Outstanding work under extremely challenging conditions." "Thank you, ma'am. The team performed flawlessly, and the hostages were recovered safely." Chen's voice carried a note of amusement. "Sergeant, I'm specifically calling about your individual performance. Captain Torres described your rooftop engagement in terms I've rarely heard him use. According to his report, you fought like a one-person army while maintaining mission focus throughout." Elena remained silent, unsure how to respond to such praise. Chen continued, "I'm calling because we have a special assignment opportunity that might interest you. The Pentagon is forming a new joint task force that requires operators with your specific skill set. The position would mean a promotion and significantly increased responsibility. Ma'am, I'm honored by the opportunity, but I'm very satisfied with my current assignment. This team has become my military family, and I believe I can continue contributing to mission success here." Chen paused before responding. "Sergeant, I admire your loyalty, but I want you to consider something important. Your talents are being wasted at your current level. The new task force would allow you to train other operators and potentially save more lives through teaching than you could through individual missions." Elena had never considered herself instructor material, but Chen's words resonated with experiences from tonight's mission. During the firefight, she had relied on techniques learned from dozens of trainers throughout her career. Perhaps passing those skills to new operators was the next logical step in her professional development. "Ma'am, may I have some time to consider the opportunity?" "Of course. Take a week to think about it, then contact me with your decision. Either way, you have a bright future in special operations." After ending the call, Elena walked outside and looked up at the Ukrainian sky. Stars shone through breaks in the cloud cover, reminding her of childhood nights when her grandfather had taught her to navigate using celestial markers. Mija, he used to say, the stars never move, but we do. Sometimes the best direction is not the one that feels most comfortable. Tonight she had again been forced to fight without her primary weapons. For the second time, she had defeated multiple opponents using only hand-to-hand combat skills. Both incidents had ended successfully, but Elena understood that relying on such techniques was not sustainable long-term strategy. Perhaps Lieutenant Colonel Chen was right about the instructor position. Teaching other operators to avoid equipment failures might prevent situations where hand-to-hand combat became necessary. Sharing hard-won experience could multiply her impact beyond what any individual operator could accomplish alone. Elena thought about the 12 aid workers who were now safe because her team had succeeded despite equipment failures and overwhelming odds. Their rescue had required every skill she possessed, and some she was still developing. But more importantly, it had demonstrated that training, determination, and tactical thinking could overcome almost any obstacle. Her grandfather's words echoed in her memory as she prepared for sleep. Mija, the strongest hunters are those who never need to prove their strength. Elena smiled at the wisdom in that simple statement. She had proven herself twice under the most demanding conditions possible. Perhaps now it was time to help others develop the same capabilities. The stars would still be there to guide her way, but the path forward might lead in directions she had never imagined. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. But tonight, Elena Vasquez slept peacefully, knowing that when her weapon had been taken away, she had found something even more powerful within herself.